All right, so here we are today. It is Saturday, November 14th, and we're rejoining Nan. And the bulk of today will be spent on her early years as a married woman at Ralston Creek. But there's a couple stories she was reminded of, and I just think we'll go ahead and record them. So go ahead, Nan.
Well, I just think back to the summer before Dad and I were married. Excuse me, I was in North Haven, of course, most of it with Granny and Grandpa, and I did a lot of sailing, and I raced, and I took the race, the knockabout, in which is the boat that there are no more of them. There are a few that have been kept, but God, what a wonderful series. Oh, they were great boats, but anyway, they were oversailed, but they were really fun to sail. And the August series, it was the last race in the August series, and we were coming into the home stretch to the finish line, and I was nip and tuck with the senior senator Everett Stoltenstall from Massachusetts, who was a great sailor, and he was to windward, and I was behind him. That's a very good, if the wind is light, a lot of times you'll pick up an extra puff if you're in what they call a safe leeward position, but it was nip and tuck, and I wanted so badly to win that August series. And those big blue flags on the upstairs door,
yeah,
those are for the August and July series. But that's what those represent. But anyway, we were both staring like heck and I had the right of way, because if you're in that position, you do have the right of way. And I was feeling in the tiller, feeling every little puff of air. And then crash, his boom hit my head because he was so close. Well, it was just, it happens. But anyway, and
did it knock you out?
I had to go with a big expletive. and here's a gentleman that I did revere. But anyway, we went to the finish line, and I think he actually got maybe a nose of a boat ahead of me. I'm not sure. Well, we were pretty equal. Anyway, of course, then I had the audacity to foul him out because he hit the boat. And
so you have to file a foul? Is that what you do?
Yeah. And he was great. I mean, he's a great, big, tall man and just a lovely, sweet guy. And he said, "You were absolutely right, Mary. You should have done that. That's great. You should have." I thought, my Lord, when I thought about it later, I was absolutely mortified. This is the senior senator from Massachusetts.
So you would have been 19?
Yeah, I was 20. I was 20.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
But that was the sort of the culmination of my racing career and sailing career, which
I didn't know that about those flags.
Yeah, that's what those are.
Oh,
and
wow.
Very coveted. You may remember, if you remember in North Haven, Granny had a lot of them in the.
I do.
Well, that's what they were, each for a different series. And Johnny won most of them. But I was the skipper of that boat through the summer season of that year.
Do you sail alone when you sail a boat like that?
Oh, no, you had a crew of 2 people, because every time you came about, you had to make an adjustment with the jib.
So who was your crew?
I don't remember who was my crew on that particular, maybe Johnny. No, Johnny wasn't with me, but one of the other very pivotal races in the season, Johnny was my main crewman, and we had 2 jibs. One was very old, but it was just a perfect, God, it held the wind perfectly, and but the material, the canvas was rotten. I mean, it wasn't very good. And we came around this one flag, and of course we went more into the wind, so we had to tighten up the sheet, and the boat started to tip over, and by gosh, the darn jib blew out. It split. And we couldn't afford to lose any time, because we were nip and tuck. We had a good start. And we were on our way. And Johnny took the second jib, climbed up the forestay, which is a cable going from the bow of the boat to the top of the mast, clipped on the second jib, and got the sheets hooked to it. He shinnied up that thing and never lost the wind out of the sail.
Did you guys win?
We did it. We won the.
Oh, that's a great story. That's a great
Johnny
story.
was he was an incredible sailor, and he always took risks, but he just loved it. He was real. Of course, he was a very competitive person, but he and I had a great relationship anyway. But it was fun. It was fun.
That's good. Oh,
So
that's cool.
that sort of, North Haven and sailing. That was my big moment in my racing career.
Oh, that's great. So then you get married, and so I think we left off at, you guys had just arrived at Ralston Creek after a 3 or 4 day trip.
Right. Yeah. And I think we were gone maybe a week, not quite. But the one thing I neglected to tell you was the first morning after we were married, Granny had so many people in the house that she sent out a lot of laundry to the school laundry so that it would come, she just couldn't keep up.
Right.
And Dad picked up what he thought was his laundry, and we opened it up. He expected to find, T-shirts or I don't know what. My God, it was all of Tom Cleveland's clerical collars. And I thought, yeah, welcome to the Crocker family, Bardo. It was good.
Oh my gosh.
Quite funny. So we sent them back, and Ma got his stuff sent on. But anyway.
That after the motel story, that's quite a day.
It was.
So then when you guys got to Ralston Creek, did you live with Granny and Papa's, or?
No, we were in the cabin that we ended up living in, but it was pretty crude because we didn't have any furniture, and Ma had provided, well, it's the same couch I still have in my living room now.
Oh, wow.
She gave me a couch, and I had, I think, 1 or 2 other chairs, and I had the antique desk that sits in the front hall. I'd been a wedding present from one of my aunts, and things like that, and a bed. We had, Granny and Grandpa gave the guy who taught the shop class at Groton it's the bed I have. He made that bed, and she had it made so it was extra long for Dad because he was so tall. Mm-hmm. And it was, but anyway, we had 2 army cots.
Oh my gosh.
And, it was, but when the furniture finally arrived, the guy driving the moving van was a riot because he just had dropped stuff off all across the country, of course, and had this little bundle for us. But coming up that road to Ralston Creek, his eyes were, he was scared to death. I don't think he'd ever been in the mountains before. And one of the old timers, Gus Broom, was there, who was just a character he was a neighbor and an absolutely lovable guy, but he had all sorts of old time stories. But he was talking to the driver, and he said, this is really God's country. I don't know where you come from, but anyway, we think this is God's country. And the driver looked at him and said, well, sir, it may be God's country, but he made it, and then he never came back, did he?
Oh, funny.
He was so scared. He was terrified. But anyway, so and we made the cabin. Our bedroom was tiny. It wasn't as big as where the kitchen table is here. But we squeezed the furniture in there, and then we had another bedroom about the size of this area where the kitchen table is. We made into our living room, and then we opened a doorway into a next bedroom. This has been a cabin for girls is what it was. And didn't have a sink or running water in it, but we made that into the kitchen. And we had 2 little bathrooms, one connected to our bedroom, and the other one was across the hall, and it was all unfinished wood floors, and it wasn't hardwood, and the dust and dirt was horrendous. But anyway, Dad made this big dish drain, and I just put it over the old bath. It was one of those old bathtubs with a claw feet.
Yeah, oh, fun.
And so I just had a dish rack on that, and then the trouble was that the faucet of the bathtub was one of those old-fashioned ones with a tiny little spigot that zoomed down. Well, of course, rinsing the glasses, I broke every glass we ever were given as a wedding present, rinsing it out. But that's where I did my dishes, period.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
And,
so tell me about, there's a bat story in that cabin, I know. And then I think we ought to go to how you went from not cooking at all and Granny teaching you how to cook for 60 when you had all the summer kids. But isn't there a backstory from that?
Now, the backstory was a big four.
Okay, so we'll skip that. We'll get to that later. But so tell me about Granny, and if you could describe her a little, because she's just.
Oh, she was just a great woman. She was 5'2" and had this marvelous sort of little bit raspy voice, and just a beautiful person and a beautiful inside and out. She was just glorious. And you know, I think she was having it was wonderful for her to have some female companionship. But I mean, I think of the things we did together. I mean, she taught me how to cook for 60 people on a wood stove, and I'd never cooked before. And we just had fun. I mean, you know, we couldn't keep any kitchen help, so she and I ended by doing most of it that first summer, and we had it down. We could do dishes for 60 people in 20 minutes.
Wow.
It was, well, it's that heavy brown china and boy, I tell you, we had to scald it with hot water, but she made a game out of everything. And I'll never forget her. Of course, we did everything. The stove was not powered with coal, it was powered with firewood. So we had to cut firewood for the cook stove. And she didn't have an electric stove until, oh goodness, it was, you know, I don't know, maybe just before we moved to Big Four.
Really? Wow.
But she, we were cleaning the kitchen for the summer in preparation for the summer kids and scrubbing the walls and whatnot. And she had a great big barrel in the corner of the kitchen, which was her flour barrel. And she was short. So she climbed up in a chair and then up on top of the flour barrel, scrubbing the wall. And all of a sudden I heard this shriek. And I looked over and she came up out of that flour barrel covered with flour. And she was hysterically laughing. But we, you know, I mean, you just made a good time of whatever you had to do.
That's fun.
And I, you know, then Dad and I started eating in our own house, our own little cabin, and
in the summer or just
no, not in the summer, but in the, you know, that first winter we did, and it was, I mean, I literally knew how to boil water and cook frozen peas. That's it. I didn't know how to do anything, but I learned.
That's hard to believe. That's hard.
I'll never forget. We had an electric coffee pot that we'd been given as a wedding present, and I filled it the way I thought I was supposed to fill it. And I thought, well, at least get Bardo a cup of coffee. Well, pulled it out. It was dirty water. I yanked over the top of it. I was so frustrated. And I thought, there's surely got to be, I don't know what was wrong, but anyway, the basket full of coffee grounds somehow fell into my hands and I just threw it at the wall. I was so mad. I couldn't even make a pot of coffee.
Oh my gosh. Well, we
got it. We learned, and it was, you know, our little living room was very cozy and whatnot, but the trouble was every time he shook down the furnace in the winter, all the dust came up through the floor, you know. I mean, it was because it was a summer cabin and it had an old furnace in it, a hot, you know, just open heat ducts, but it was, you know, and the furnace was, again, it was wood powered. So they did a lot of cutting of wood because they had a lot of wood.
So the intent when the kids would come in the summer, they would do a lot of pay to basically come to camp, if you will, and then do a lot of ranch work. What did they, now in Carbondale, I remember them putting up hay, but what did they do at Ralston Creek?
Well, they peeled corral poles and they cleaned up stuff and built fence and and we had to bring, you know, timber down for the sawmill, and they do whatever jobs they could. I mean, that was one of my main jobs when we were first married, driving the old Army 6x6, which had been stripped down to carry these big logs. Dad would fell them, and then we'd snake them out with this old Army truck, and then somehow, I don't know how he got them back. I'm not quite sure how we got them to the sawmill, but anyway, I love that. I'd never driven a big old truck.
Of that, I think somewhere I came across when I was staying at your house. There's some pictures of that.
Yeah.
And
Dad would cut all the the lodge pole for corral poles and fence posts, and then the kids would peel them.
Okay.
And they painted things, and they, I mean, they painted the barn, and they weeded the garden, and
then a nightly game of baseball.
Softball, yeah, and we'd go on pack trips those days we went on actual horse pack trips.
Yeah, well, we did.
Then we switched. Actually, then we switched. I guess maybe when I was at the ranch, they were still going by horse pack trip, and then they switched to hiking trips. It just was, But the year I was there, we went by horseback. And Dad's horse, of course, got saddle sores, or somebody's kids got battle sores, so they had to use. So he walked and gave them his horse. I mean, he walked many, many miles. He didn't,
And he walked darn fast with those long legs.
Those long legs, and the same when he could run around the baseball diamond. He didn't take very many strides. And, but we had a great time, and I of course, I loved to play softball. It was great, but Dad didn't throw the ball gently. He threw it to get it there before the runner did. Oh, yeah, but you better catch it.
But neither did you. You had a pretty good arm on you, I remember.
Well, I did. I can't. My shoulders now. I can't throw a ball now, but I used to. Well, that was thanks to Say. I think I told you. She wouldn't. When I was a little girl, she would not. We'd play catch with a hard baseball, and a glove, and she'd fire the ball at me. She was 4 years older, and she'd say, "You're not going in the house till you stop throwing like a girl."
Oh, jeez.
And so I learned to throw a ball. I really did. And I always won the softball throw when I was at Concord Academy. Because I throw a ball.
Well, you can throw a ball. Now, so September 1958, you guys are married. You come to the Ralston Creek. And then I think in 1960, you all went to the Big Four Ranch. But did Uncle Mike, I know, and Aunt Kit got married in 1960. Did they live on the ranch at Ralston Creek when you guys did?
They did. They got married. They got married in over Thanksgiving weekend, and they stayed there at the ranch that first summer because Steve and Elaine went to the racetrack to train horses themselves, and so they stayed in Granny Papa's big house.
Okay.
And, but before, I'm trying to think. Oh, I tell you, of course, in that first year we were married, we had horses we had to exercise, and we had a couple that were going to be on the track. And one was, Papa's gave us this most beautiful gelding and Porteous. And so Dad would put me on one horse, and he'd get on a horse, and we'd go up the dirt road just to exercise them at a lope, and then he'd make a daggum horse race out of it. Scared the living hell out of me. But anytime there was any excitement or danger, he turned to laughter. Well, I was petrified.
Did he run home? I remember he always used to get on us. If you run a horse, you never run him home. But I bet he ran that horse home. Did he run it home?
No, we were usually away.
Okay.
He was always away, not coming back to the barn.
Okay.
And he would. And you see, when growing, the whole time I was at Ralston Creek, none of the summer kids knew that Dad even knew how to ride because his legs were, his legs weren't good even then, even though he had to have a fused leg. But one day, some of the kids hadn't let the horses out, whoever was supposed to do it that day, and that really ticked Dad off. And we were eating dinner in the summer dining room, which was Granny and Papa's living room in the winter. And we heard this thundering noise, and here came Dad bareback, running. I think there were about 25 horses up right past the building, and he was, there was dust. And, it was something he wouldn't have wanted the kids to do, to run them, but he was making a point. Who left the horses in the corral?
Oh, gotcha. Oh, he always did have a way of making a subtle point, didn't he?
He did. He always did. Yeah. He
really did. My gosh. Well, I think that's probably about a good time length for today. So I think next time, if it's okay, I think what we should do is spend a little bit of time about Big Four and setting that all up. I read a lot about that in Dad's diaries, and there's some stories.
Mame was born when we were at Ralston Creek.
That's right. The August
you were born in Glenwood.
Right. So
That's
let's
next
talk
year.
about that a little bit as a young mother, and then the move to Big Four, and then I want to take a little deeper dive into the multi-generations of people who connected at the ranch and are now longtime family friends, but Bon and Ed. I mean, that's how we got to know the Holden Atlantic
Sure,
clan.
sure. Well, of
And
course, we were neighbors of Johnny's.
right. But
Johnny was right across the fence, and Cecil was one of my closest friends.
right. So let's pick up there. Let's start with Mame being a young mother at Ralston Creek, and then the next year you moved to Carbondale, and the following winter I was born. So,
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that. These have been a lot of fun, and then and we'll go.
Get off your back and get on that heat pad.
Yeah, I will. Hang on, let me push the record button.